The Federation of Malaysia was formed in September 1963 after years of backroom discussions, planning and, finally, very intense and delicate negotiations between late 1961 and 1963. The origins of the Federation, however, remain a contentious issue among scholars. The idea of a wider political entity, encompassing the Federation of Malaya, the British-controlled territories of Sarawak, North Borneo, Singapore, and Brunei, was formally announced by Tunku Abdul Rahman, the Prime Minister of the Independent Federation of Malaya, at a speech given to the Foreign Correspondents Association of Southeast Asia in Singapore on May 27, 1961. In his speech, Tunku suggested the desirability of a closer association of the territories of Malaya, Singapore, North Borneo, Sarawak and Brunei to strengthen political and economic cooperation. The announcement was a major departure from the previous position of his alliance party government vis-à-vis the merger with Singapore and surprised many political observers including the governors of the British-controlled Borneo states because Malayan leaders had been turning down proposals by Singapore leaders for a direct merger with Malaya for some time. The formation of a broader federation between Malaya and Singapore, which was separated from Malaya in 1946, was contentious for several reasons. First, was the Malayan government's concern over the racial demographic balance. A merger between Malaya and Singapore and the inclusion of 1 million Chinese from the city-state would upset the political balance held by the Malay majority in Malaya. Second, an equally pressing issue was that of the perceived communist threat emanating from Singapore. There was a fear among Singapore leaders, particularly the ruling People's Action Party that, after the split in the party in 1961 and the formation of the BARISAN SOSIALIS, which opposed the merger, communists could come to power in Singapore. BARISAN SOSIALIS was viewed as being dominated by the pro-communists. Parties in Malaya such as the ruling Alliance Party and the Pan-Malayan Islamic Party were also concerned about the communist influence from Singapore. In addition, Singapore leaders had approached Malayan leaders several times before 1961, seeking a direct merger as they felt the small city-state was not economically viable. The inclusion of the Borneo territories raised their own peculiar issues of integration such as questions of political and economic autonomy in these territories. These states were politically backward and there was some concern regarding the potential dominance of the Malayan state in the proposed wider federation. Nevertheless, Tunku's statement started a process of intense discussions and, later, constitutional negotiations that led to the formation of the Federation of Malaysia on September 16, 1963, comprising the Federation of Malaya, Singapore, Sarawak and North Borneo, later known as Sabah. Brunei, which was involved in the final negotiations, opted out of the new federation at the last minute. The formation of the Federation of Malaysia has received much attention from scholars in recent years with the availability of declassified documents related to its formation. There are, however, considerable disagreements among scholars on the origins of the idea of the wider federation and the underlying reasons for the creation of such an identity. Sometimes the origin of the federation is attributed to Prime Minister Tunku Abdul Rahman's statement of May 27, 1961 urging a closer association of these territories. This is viewed as a starting point for a serious consideration of the federation idea as the formal talks began after this announcement. A closer examination of the primary documents on the formation of the federation, however, indicates that the origin of the idea of a wider federation has much deeper roots and Tunku's statement coincided with substantive high-level discussions that were taking place in the Colonial Office and in Southeast Asia on the future of the British-controlled territories in the region at that time. In fact, British Commissioner-General for Southeast Asia Malcolm MacDonald had conducted serious discussions on the subject of closer relations among the British-controlled territories in Borneo and Malaya as early as 1951. Existing studies have not discussed adequately the deeper origins of the idea of the Federation, focusing mainly on the formal discussions in the post-1961 period. This article traces the formation of the Federation to more varied and complex origins in the post-war period when the convergence of interests of the various parties provided a new impetus for the establishment of the broader Federation. we show that the idea of a wider federation, although it dates back to the pre-World War II period, was taken up most seriously in the early 1950s, and again between 1960 and 1961 when new developments in the region required a reconsideration of the idea and prompted Tunku to formally propose it.